Okay, we're back. I went and picked up a carby and a header pipe the other day. So I got them sitting in there. As you can see with the carby in there, there's not a lot of room around it for engine mounts. I'm not going to be able to run back to this cross member here because it's not going to happen. So the new plan is I'm going to brace up the front of the frame here, these mounts here. So I'll just take a bit of RHS here, which is the same diameter as that front tube from the factory. I'm going to run that back to the frame here and weld that in place, so that's going to stiffen up those front mounts a little bit. And then between that and the frame, I will run a mount that goes to the bolt there on the back of the cylinder. So that I hope will be strong enough. We'll just have to see. I'll start tacking that up and see how it looks. The header pipe is pretty close to fitting, but it does foul a little bit on this front mount. So that's going to need to be notched out in there and clearanced for the header pipe. So I'm going to have to do that as well. But apart from that, I think we're going to be alright. This rear cross member, you can see when I notched that out to put the engine in, I cut way too much out of that. So rather than try and just patch that up, I'm probably just going to cut the whole thing out and I'll weld a new one in a little bit further back and a little bit higher, just so it clearances the engine and then it doesn't have to be notched out. So yeah, that's what we're going to get into now. First thing I'll do is make this header pipe fit, so I'll notch that front bracket, strengthen that up. Then we're going to run the horizontal brace from the front engine hanger to the frame. Then we'll make some brackets for the rear cylinder engine mount there. And then finally we'll put a new cross member in it. So I've got a bit of work ahead of me, and so I better get started on that and check back in when I've got everything tacked up. Okay, so that's the first job done. This front engine hanger is now clearanced for the exhaust. So it's pretty simple really, just had to heat it and hammer it in a bit and then grind it back out. Just put some weld back over the bit that was thin to strengthen it back up. But now we've got probably, see if I can see that there, a good 3 to 4 millimeters clearance all the way around. It'll be a little bit more again once the exhaust gasket's in, which isn't there at the moment. So that should be all good. That'll allow the engine to flex a bit without rubbing once it's painted. So that's good. Can check that one off the list. And we'll carry on. And we'll start making some braces for these top engine mounts and run back to the frame. Just finished making the braces to tie the frame to the front hangers. Just made it out of the same diameter as this existing tube here, but they kind of, I don't know, I think they look pretty shit. So they're going to stay for now while I carry on doing other stuff, but I think I'm going to come up with something that's better looking than that. I don't normally like to use square tube because it's ugly, but I thought it might match this front section, but I don't think it looks that good. So come up with a new plan for that. But for now I'm going to carry on with plating the frame. I decided I am going to run a top engine mount directly to the frame using some tube work. So I've just made a cardboard template here to make a plate to go on the inside of the frame there, and then just cut some 2 millimeter mild steel up that's going to go there. Made it the full height of the frame so I can get a weld across the top edges of the frame just for strength, and then it also joins into the existing part of where the frame butts into this rear section here, so should be pretty strong. Same up the front, it's going to pick up on some of the existing welds there. and then being 2mm thick, that's going to make the overall thickness of this part of the frame closer to 5mm or 1/4 inch, which should be strong enough to hang a cross member off it for the top engine mount. So I'm going to go ahead now and make one for the other side and get it tacked in there and start measuring up for some tube work to hang the mounts off. Just quickly, I've got the plates just clamped in place onto the frame, and then this piece of tube tacked in place here, which is going to be a new cross member, which is also going to have the top engine mounts coming off it. So you can see there's just enough room between the back of the rocker cover and the carby. It should be more than enough really. I don't think it's going to affect getting the engine in and out. And then you see here, I'm going to have a pretty straight run from that tube down to the engine mount. So I'll triangulate some tube sort of off there on a bit of an angle down to a mount on the cylinder there. It's a bit tricky to explain, so it's probably better off I'll just keep going and I'll show you once I've got all the tube work done and tacked up in place. But that way I'm still going to be able to have the engine mounted from those top mounts there, so with room for the carby. So, and I think it'll look alright and it should be strong. So I'm going to keep going and then I'll just show you once I've got all the tube in place and tacked up. I think I'm going to stick with this for the top engine mount. I've just got it tacked in place at the moment. Heaps of room for the carby. So it's pretty simple really. It's just a straight tube across the top, welded to each side of the frame, then a couple welded down. I just showed before me heating it up and putting a dent in it. That was just to give it, so it needs a little bit of clearance there on the back of the cylinder head, so that's just to give it room there. But otherwise pretty straightforward. I'll just see if I can get this bolt out with one hand. So for the lower mount here, it's just a 150mm long bolt, and then just some tube, you can see there, and then I've machined up these little aluminium sleeves that just slot in there, one on that side, one on the other side, and then just run the bolt straight through it. Just like that. So I think that's going to be strong enough. That's now the third mount that the engine's got. I think that'll be enough. I might put a gusset between here, but I don't think it's going to need it. It seems alright. Same as these aluminium bushings here. I may end up making some new ones out of like a suspension rubber type, sort of plasticky rubber type bushing sort of deal, so it absorbs some vibration from the motor. But might not have to. The aluminium could work fine. I'll leave it as that for now. So now that that's all tacked up and square, I've got to pretty much take the engine out now so I can replace this cross member and then fully weld everything in, including these plates here on the frame. But yeah, I think that'll do. I don't think it needs to be any more fancy than that. It's simple, it does the job, it's out of the way, and it's got room for the carby, plenty of room for the exhaust to run through there. So I think we'll leave it at that. So next thing I've got to do now is take this engine back out, replace this cross member, and we'll check back in then. Just want to show you what I've got planned for this new cross member. So cut the old one out. Originally that just butted up to the inside of the frame there like that, so it was fine for the 125 engine, would have done the job for that, but I want something a bit stronger for the 450 because the frame's going to have a lot more stress put through it. So I've drilled the frame on the outside as well, just so I can run a new cross member all the way through. So I haven't trimmed this obviously yet, but just slot this through. So now that's going to go all the way through the frame on each side. I just thought it was probably necessary because this frame is so thin that I just didn't want to butt weld it back up against the inside there. I think it's just not going to be strong enough like that with the 450 engine in it. So we're going to run this all the way through, be welded on both sides. So that should be plenty strong now. We've also got to plate the frame here. That's where the old subframe was welded into the frame. And I'm going to use a different type of mount for the new subframe. So I've got to plate that hole there and fix up that. And then I'll probably still have to clearance the new cross member slightly for the engine. So I'm about to put the engine back in now to see what needs to be done for clearance from the cross member. And then hopefully we won't need too much, and then it'll be good to go to weld it in. Alright, cross member's tacked in. Pretty good for clearance, heaps of room in there. That's that little notch bit that I showed you just before. It's just to, it follows the contour of the case, and then that bit there for the bolt. Tacked it in just with the MIG at the moment on outside and the inside, but I'll come back and TIG that on in fully when I weld the rest of the frame. So yeah, there's not much else to do as far as that cross member goes. It's a little bit bigger diameter, a little bit thicker wall than the original one. That's the original one there. So it should be a bit stronger, especially going all the way through the frame now, so it picks up on both sides of that frame. So I think that will be okay. So still got a bit to do, just lots of little jobs really. So I think that's probably, this video is long enough. If you've sat through it this long, then you've got more patience than I have. So I'm going to wrap this one up now, and we'll come back with a part 3 where I just sort of finish everything up really. I've got to put some crush tubes in this tube here for these bolts. I've got to neaten up this brace that I've put in here because I still think that's ugly. I think I'm going to make a fill piece for there that's going to work with that, but I'll show you that as I do it. Lots of little stuff like get rid of all these little brackets that used to be on here that I no longer need. And I need to put some holes in these plates so I can plug weld them to the frame as well as weld around the perimeter of it. So that'll probably be the next job I do. It's all pretty boring stuff, but just stuff that needs to be done to get it finished up. And then once I've got all that sorted, oh yeah, and I've got to fix up that bit of the frame there as well where the subframe was. Get the engine back out of it, and then I'll get the whole frame up onto the steel welding bench I've got and jig it up, and then do all the final welding in there just to make sure it stays straight. So just going to leave it with tack welds for now, and yeah, we'll wrap this video up here with the engine mounted and pretty solid, and then we'll pick up next time with all the finishing pieces.